Hello, friend. So I've been thinking about this one for a while, a few weeks, and I touched on it briefly, I think, in an earlier audio. But I wanted to talk about uh, when you've had parents or caretakers who didn't fully meet you emotionally where you needed to be met. I think all of us have some level of that because I think that's part of the process of just becoming a mature adult, that we have to go through an experience where our parents don't give us what we need. And if you are a parent, don't use this to shame yourself or have guilt over what you did or didn't do for your kids. Because again, I think it's part of the soul's process of growing and developing. Um, I think it's part of the amnesia that we have to forget who we truly are before we can fully remember it. Like, we have to go through that process of remembering and rediscovering our truth. And so part of that journey is, you know, having some type of, I guess, abandonment on some level, emotionally or physically sometimes, depending on your circumstances. Um, like, it's okay to acknowledge that your parents or caregivers, whoever was primarily responsible for you when you were a child or teenager, like, it's okay to recognize that they did their absolute best with what they have, what they knew, with where they were on their own journey. And if that best was not what you needed, like at a fundamental level, it's okay to acknowledge that. That doesn't mean that you love your parents any less. It doesn't mean that you don't forgive them. It doesn't mean that you can't recognize that maybe they were too young when they, started their journey as a parent. Um, like if you were emotionally neglected, or or maybe they left physically. There are people who've been through that experience as well, um, either through death, divorce, abandonment. Uh, what am I circling around? Like, what wants to come through? I feel like there is something that I want to allow to come through. And that's part of the reason why I haven't done this. I've been sitting with this one for like a few weeks actually. Uh, Part of it was I took a trip to Boston and I ended up having this conversation with this bartender because it was just really empty at the hotel, and I just felt this urge to ask him what he was, looking to do. And just because it's Boston's a college town, he was obviously in his 20s. I figured he was a student, um, and he had recently graduated, but wasn't really doing what he wanted to do. And then we ended up having this long conversation, and that was one of the things that came out of it, is that his mom just wasn't really there for him emotionally just because of everything she had going on in her life at the time she was raising him. And I said that to him, that, it's okay that you can accept that, because she was having such a hard time as a single mom, that you can still acknowledge that and be grateful for everything she did for you. And also accept that she wasn't there for you emotionally the way you needed it. And, I've had a similar experience just because my younger brother was bipolar and schizophrenic, My mother was way more consumed with his needs, and that was appropriate. He needed her more than I did. That's just the fact. And I can acknowledge that. And it was okay that I eventually got to a point where I recognized that I also still didn't get what I needed emotionally growing up as a result of all of that. And it's tricky when you are, pretty self-aware and you've done a lot of therapy and, the workshops and all the stuff. Like I understood that for a long time mentally for years, but I don't really think it was until a few years ago that I really gave myself permission to emotionally grieve that I didn't get the mothering that I needed. And it's okay that that happened because on some level I do understand that as a soul I set that up, that I wanted to go on that kind of journey to learn something, to move through it. And as a result of that, I gained a lot of great skills. I became incredibly resilient and independent. If anything, I veered too much to the independent side, and I still struggle with hyper independence and being vulnerable with other people and allowing other people to support me and be there for me emotionally and, be willing to support me and meet my needs in friendships and in romantic relationships. And so that's something I'm still um, working on now. I mean, I'm single right now, but eventually I'll be in a romantic relationship again, and I'm willing. I'm probably more willing than I've ever been in my entire life to be emotionally available and supported by another human being. And I had to grieve what I didn't have in order to have that happen. I had to give myself permission to just feel the pain and the loneliness of that. And irony too is that I guess I didn't really feel safe enough to go through that journey until after my mother died. She died in 2018. Um, but even if your parents are still alive and you have something like this that you're working through, just give yourself permission to feel it, I mean, of course, do it in a safe way, like if you need a therapist or, other people to help you move through that, or, maybe there are certain containers that might help you move through that, other life coaches or even reparenting workshops and podcasts. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. So, definitely get the support that you need to help you move through that if that's what you need to do. I'm just saying from my own personal experience. Um, yeah, I just think it's interesting that I didn't feel comfortable really moving through all of that stuff until after my brother had actually died. And I guess a part of me was so attached to just how hard she worked for me and my brother. Because my father died when I was young. So, she was dealing with that too, just being a single mom. And I think maybe that's part of it too, like when you lose a parent when you're a kid, that when you just have one of them left, or maybe, one parent left, like abandoned the family. Because I definitely have friends who've been through that experience too. And I think that that's what happens is like if one parent has gone, you just want to really totally support the one who stayed, who's there, who's with you, and you feel guilty acknowledging that like they're not giving you everything you need because they're there, they're showing up, they're doing the thing, but it's okay. Like it's both and I think that's part of the spiritual journey, maturing process to be able to hold that both and. Yes, they did their best. And sometimes it just wasn't enough. And that doesn't mean that like they didn't do their best, and it doesn't mean that they didn't love you. Because I definitely know my mother loved me very much. And she did her absolute best. And I think that's what I still sit with too, is like, so what is it about that journey that my soul wanted me to learn from in that process? Because a part of me still feels like I'm still learning from that journey. And it feels really weird to be this vulnerable in this space. And I recognize that other people can relate. Um, so I think it's good for me just to talk it out and see who else resonates with this, see if it makes sense. And again, if you are the single parent, know that you are absolutely doing your absolute best. And check in with your kid, if they're old enough to have that kind of conversation, to ask them, am I here emotionally for you the way you need? If they're a teenager, you might be able to have that conversation with them. If they're a young adult, or if your kids are in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, you can still ask and see what happens. It could be interesting. Who knows? Maybe someone just needs to hear that. Maybe that's why I'm feeling the urge to do this publicly. And I'm just sitting with it, breathing. Maybe that's a good thing for all of us to do. Just take a breath. Just take a few breaths together. Just in slowly and gently through the nose and out through the mouth. In, out, in, out, in, out. So wherever you are in your journey, be kind to yourself, be kind to your parents. If you are a parent, be kind to yourself. If you're not a parent, be kind to yourself. And I'd love to know what you think, what you feel, what this has sparked in you, what else is there to ask, consider, ponder. Because I feel like I'm right on the edge of something, but it's just not coming to the surface right now. But I just wanted to be open and vulnerable. And I guess start the conversation or continue it. Maybe it's just because I'm on the edge of this Scorpio full moon. There's a lot of intensity in the air. I'm feeling it. And I really love the idea of doing these audios every day for at least a couple months, I think. We'll see how it goes. And we're on this journey together. So sending you love, and always remember to honor the light within you.